18th of September 1944. General Hassan Montefiore waited inside his operations center, close to Germany's edge, examining charts that showed, after endless months, a chance he'd nearly lost: triumph. Montefiore had reached 51. He wasn't driven by ideology. He understood practicality, handled armored combat expertly, battled across Russia, North Africa. He'd witnessed entire armies fall apart. He recognized the Wehrmacht bled out, fighting simultaneously 2 locations. Yet this particular day, he thought victory sat within reach. His forces included the 113th Panzer Brigade. These weren't broken leftovers from Normandy units, barely functioning, desperate. This represented Hitler's emergency response unit. New formations, shipped straight from production facilities. These war machines arrived so fresh, certain operators hadn't mastered rotating mechanisms yet. The brigade carried 58 completely new Panther tanks, Europe's Western theater's most dangerous armor. Montefiore calculated numbers, coldly, methodically. America's Sherman represented dependable machinery, yes, but remained a medium-weight vehicle carrying a standard 75mm weapon. Its front plating. A Panther penetrated it from 2,000 meters distance. The Panther's angled plating deflected American rounds like children's toys. The Panther's 75mm weapon destroyed Shermans from ranges where American firepower became pointless. He examined fuel numbers. The 113th Brigade received 600,000 liters of fuel, sufficient for 2 days, maximum intensity. 2 days. That's everything he required. His goal stayed simple: drive into General George Patton's 3rd Army's vulnerable right side. Patton stretched himself thin, fuel supply routes extending across 400 kilometers, armor scattered throughout 180 kilometers of fighting lines. Montefiure's approach: gather his 58 Panthers, strike straight toward America's 4th Armored Division, isolate Patton's leading elements, obliterate them separately, force a catastrophe making Americans stop their whole push forward. Every traditional combat principle suggested success. German armor outclassed opponents. German strength stayed compact. Surprise remained total. Americans suspected nothing. A fresh Panzer Brigade gathering within Lorraine's mist forests. But Montefiore calculated using 1940s thinking inside a 1944 world. He believed tank combat depended on plating thickness, weapon size. He didn't realize he marched his brigade toward a snare built from 3 elements German tactical minds couldn't grasp. 7:30 morning, September 19th. 113th Panzer Brigade's forward units started their movement toward staging positions. Dense, thick mist swept across Lorraine farmland like something alive. Vision fell to 50 yards, dropped to 30 yards. Tank leaders stared through observation scopes. Operators barely saw vehicles ahead. Mantle's biggest edge: the long-distance killing capability of the Panther's 75mm gun vanished immediately. A 2,000-meter kill needs vision. These Panthers couldn't observe 50 meters. The emergency brigade sat blind. Within American Combat Command, a command post 15 kilometers back, Colonel Bruce Clark got initial intelligence from front observers. Massive engine sounds, big formations, heading west. Clark lacked heavy armor. He commanded the 37th Tank Battalion under Lieutenant Colonel Creighton Abrams, a soldier whose name eventually graced America's primary combat tank. Abrams stayed calm. He understood immediately. The mist created equality, catastrophic equality. If Germans couldn't observe at 2,000 yards, superior weapons meant nothing. This became close-quarters combat. Quickness, reflexes determined everything. The German line pushed through fog, tank motors thundering, treads grinding, leaders crouched inside hatches. They anticipated crushing American forward positions, breaking through toward support areas. Instead, the front Panther suddenly exploded, burning. The rotating turret blew apart, followed by the second Panther column position, then third. German operators panicked. Radio order broke down. Tank leaders spun turrets sideways, frantically hunting muzzle flashes inside fog, finding none visible. Incoming fire struck from sides, piercing thinner flank plating. Shells bouncing off thick frontal sections tore through weaker sides. German communications crackled, confused. Enemy left side. Wait, enemy right. Where's the enemy? Leaders opened hatches for better visibility through mist, getting killed by hidden machine gun streams. German leaders believed they'd encountered a huge barrier of American heavy armor. Reality proved far stranger. The 113th Panzer Brigade hadn't struck a barrier. They'd entered a swarm, introducing the M18 Hellcat tank destroyer. For German tankers, the Hellcat seemed laughable. It carried virtually no protection. A large machine gun penetrated its lightweight turret. It featured an exposed top, leaving operators vulnerable to fragments, explosives. By Wehrmacht thinking, which prized safety above everything, it represented a death trap. Yet the M18 possessed one number Montel completely overlooked during planning: power versus weight. The Hellcat weighed just 17 tons. Despite minimal mass, it ran on a radial aviation motor, identical type powering American fighter aircraft. This motor represented technological brilliance, generating 350 horsepower. It reached highway speeds of 55 miles per hour, faster than any tank worldwide. No Panther, Tiger, Soviet T-34 matched that velocity. The Hellcat repositioned between positions faster than medium tanks' rotated turrets. Inside Arakort's fog, this velocity became the decisive advantage. German Panthers moved in strict formation like Roman soldiers, shoulder to shoulder. They operated advancing in linked groups, protecting mutual flanks, but linked methods need visibility, communication. Fog eliminated both. American Hellcats battled like wolf packs, separate hunters, independent, linked not through closeness but radio communication. Here's how fighting developed, repeating dozens of occasions that morning. A Hellcat group from the 704th Tank Destroyer Battalion heard Panthers approaching through fog. The leader, monitoring radio, marked his location on charts. He commanded his operator to sprint toward a side position, concealed behind hedgerows, buildings. The motor screamed full power. The team moved into shooting positions. They waited, motors idling, shooter hand ready on trigger, ammunition handler, armor-piercing shells prepared for quick reloading. They waited until German giants rolled past, revealing vulnerable flanks. 3 high-speed 76mm shells slammed into a Panther's side. Penetration, ignition. The Panther's turret swung left, attempting to hit the Hellcat, but the Hellcat already moved. The operator reversed maximum power. The machine backed up 300 yards near top speed, guided by the leader shouting instructions. They shifted 300 yards along a separate road, different landscape, toward the following ambush spot. Before surviving German armor completed turret movement, the Hellcats disappeared. It represented clashing beliefs. Germans constructed tanks as armored strongholds, heavy, protected, built to absorb hits, survive. Americans constructed machines to avoid being present when hits came. Lightweight, agile, built to fire, relocate. By midday, fog started clearing. Manufil, getting updates of stopped attacks, rising casualties, commanded his leaders to push harder. The Americans can't be everywhere, break through their screen. But when sunlight burned away mist, Germans discovered the second section of America's snare had closed. During opening hours, German foot soldiers, the Panzer Grenadiers, had traveled on tank backs or followed closely in half-tracks, protecting armor from American infantry. Suddenly, when fog disappeared, the sky above Arakorт opened up. It wasn't aircraft. Not immediately. It represented something more accurate than anything German thinking could imagine. American artillery, specifically the 66th Armored Field Artillery Battalion under Colonel Bruce Clark's personal direction, executed a method that represented routine procedure for the 4th Armored Division but a weapon of startling deadliness: time on target. In conventional 1940s combat, artillery groups fired one after another. Battery A fired. The opponent heard the first shell coming. They reacted. They jumped into ditches. Battery B fired 10 seconds afterward, but by then opponents already hid underground. The shock disappeared. The killing power fell by 90% after the initial blast. America's time on target approach was groundbreaking. It represented pure calculation. A central fire planning station calculated flight duration of artillery shells from 12 separate batteries placed miles apart, different heights, different distances from objectives. The Fire Direction Center then calculated backward from a chosen impact moment what launch moment each battery needed. Battery A, placed 12 kilometers away, fired at 12:00. Battery B, placed 4 kilometers away, fired at 12:05. Battery C, placed 8 kilometers away, fired at 12:10. The calculation stayed exact. The trajectory charts stayed reliable. Every weapon fired at separate moments, yet every single shell reached target points at the identical instant. When fog disappeared on September 19th, Piper Cub observation planes, small reconnaissance craft resembling oversized bugs, circled overhead above 113th Brigade locations. The flyers observed German tank lines below. They transmitted coordinates. They became the vision of America's artillery network. For the 113th Panzer Brigade, there existed no alert, no test shots. One moment the Panzer Grenadiers advanced across muddy ground. The following moment the atmosphere above them simply shattered. Dozens of airburst shells exploded together at 30 feet height. The outcome proved hellish. Metal fragments descended like razor-edged rainfall. The shock waves killed. The Panzer Grenadiers, elite soldiers riding on armor, were devastated. Dozens perished in the opening blast. Dozens more took wounds. The metal fragments didn't damage the Panthers' plating, yet it removed from Panthers something much more critical: their vision, hearing. The outer communications equipment was destroyed. Radio aerials twisted, telephone cables cut, leadership direction collapsed. Immediately, German armor lost their defensive circle. They sealed themselves, openings shut, leaders sightless, alone in explosions. A sightless tank without foot soldier protection is finished. Without infantry protecting them from rocket teams, the Panthers sat helpless. Without leaders watching outside, they couldn't spot the Hellcats flanking them. Without radio links, they possessed no battlefield knowledge. Manufal's crack brigade wasn't fighting a battle. It was being destroyed by a mechanism. By afternoon, September 19th, the fighting ground was covered with flaming Panthers. Yet the most startling number wasn't the armor destroyed by shooting. It was the armor that simply quit. The 111th Panzer Brigade, meant to help the 113th Brigade's assault, showed up late. Why? Because they exhausted fuel traveling toward the fight. Germany had created the most advanced tank in existence. Perfect viewing equipment, better than anything Americans owned. Overlapping suspension wheels, better angled armor, high-speed cannon. Yet they couldn't manufacture the liquid fuel to transport 58 of these vehicles 20 kilometers. Meanwhile, General Patton complained about fuel problems. The Red Ball Express delivery route, a constant stream of vehicles, was spread dangerously. American armor groups rationed fuel. Yet here's the basic difference between American-German shortages. When Americans needed fuel, tanks shut down motors, waited for vehicles. When vehicles came, tanks refueled, continued fighting within hours. When Germans needed fuel, the tank was left behind. Teams destroyed the weapon opening to stop capture. They wrecked the motor. They placed explosive charges. The tank was abandoned to decay in dirt. As fighting continued over 3 days, the difference became almost absurd. American rescue teams pulled damaged Shermans back to traveling maintenance stations during fighting. Tank mechanics, laboring in open air shops in war areas, welded covers over bullet holes. They swapped damaged motors. They fixed bent weapon tubes. Tanks destroyed in morning hours refueled, got new operators, returned to fighting lines by nightfall. Germans had no rescue machines. If a Panther lost a track, it was left. If gearbox broke, left. If the motor ignited, the team escaped, the tank burned. There existed no replacement system, no backup motors from production. The 113th Panzer Brigade started the fight with 58 Panthers. Within 24 hours, they destroyed 30. Within 48 hours, 50. By week's conclusion, just 8 remained working. The United States 4th Armored Division's Tank Command, Combat Command A, destroyed 5 Sherman tanks, 3 tank destroyers in the first critical day. Complete destruction for the week totaled roughly 25 tank destroyers. Yet crucially, American destruction was quickly replaced. Within 3 days, fresh Shermans came from support areas. Within a week, Combat Command A's fighting capability was possibly stronger than when battle began. Patton wasn't beating Mantle with strategy alone. He was beating him with a delivery network reaching across the Atlantic, backward through English harbors, backward through American production plants in Michigan, New Jersey, Ohio, backward to the metal mines of Pennsylvania, backward to the petroleum plants of Texas. Mantle had created a perfect weapon, yet the workshop that built weapons was 3,000 miles distant, restricted by Hitler's administration. On September 22nd, Mantle gave commands for the 113th Panzer Brigade to pull back, withdraw. The big counteroffensive had collapsed. The final numbers were harsh. The 113th Panzer Brigade started the fight with 58 completely new Panther tanks. By week's conclusion, German documentation showed just 8 still working. The group had effectively stopped existing as a combat force. In comparison, American Combat Command A reported complete destruction of roughly 25 tank destroyers, destruction that was replaced within days. The destruction ratio wasn't a fight. It was a slaughter. A record demonstrated that a better weapon like the Panther is made completely worthless if it is sightless, lacking infantry help, unable to travel due to fuel problems, and outflanked by groups of lighter machines operating with better coordination supplies. Germans constructed warrior champions in gleaming protection. Americans constructed a production line that traveled at 50 miles per hour, a production line with communications, a production line with delivery vehicles, a production line with backup motors, ammunition, fuel. And in September 1944, in Lorraine's fog, the production line triumphed. General Mantle lived through the conflict. He published writings about Lorraine. He confessed that America's time on target bombardment, the speed of tank destroyers made classic panzer methods outdated. The fight at Aracourt is frequently overlooked. It hides in the darkness of D-Day, the Battle of the Bulge. It lacks the grand scale of those campaigns, yet it is possibly the most significant fight for grasping why Germany failed. Not because it was enormous, but because it shows the reality under the surface. It wasn't just bravery. Both opponents had bravery. German fighters were not less courageous than American fighters. It was the victory of a structure, a supply structure, a messaging structure, an industrial structure, a structure where quickness, movement, replaceable machines, backup components mattered more than single warrior skill. If you found this video informative like this video, subscribe, hit the notification for more WW2 Documenta. Thanks for watching.